Rona Rutchik. As Director of Arts Alive, for many years, I have focused on the interesting coupling of art and audience. If art is the universal communication that it is said to be, then isn't the audience a very important player in the message relay between art and audience in this communication? But who is the audience? And what does the audience know? And what is communicated between art and audience? Can this communication be an essential part of education of a student so that students can better know the world in which they live and the world that we have grown from? These are interesting questions, I think, and I'm glad that you could be here with me to talk about them. I've invited two guests to the studio today. Janet Shafner and Dr. Charles Chu are here with me, and they are going to talk to us about these kinds of questions too. Janet, you have been both a teacher and an artist, and you have had students of all kinds of ages. What have you taught them? What can you teach them? What have you done in the art world as a professional?
Well, I've taught a number of different classes and a number of different situations. I taught in a community college the appreciation of art, so that you get a very varied group that comes in and has probably no knowledge of the history of art or what artists have done, or probably many of them have never even seen an actual painting in a museum. So you introduce them to the history of art and to what art means historically and socially and in all kinds of phases. I've also taught art in a studio setting. That's a completely different kind of thing, where you're teaching people actually to pick up a brush and learn to paint and learn to do something that really enriches and enlarges their life. So there's a lot of different phases to that and a lot of different things you can teach people.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Charles Chu is with me today too, the emeritus professor at Connecticut College. Charles, you have taught both at Connecticut College and also at Yale. Can you tell us something about your career?
My career is very, very simple. I started teaching at Yale, and I enjoy it. And mainly at Yale is a language. When I came to college, that was 1965. After 15 years at Yale, of course, the language literature is the main job, but art is really my love. Therefore, I prepare myself after all these major things done. So the career is very simple, and from college to college. That's all the two places I enjoy mostly.
Mm-hmm. So you see, both of my guests today are artists, but they are also both liberally educated scholars, and both of them have taught both art and about art. We're going to talk more with them about the audience and what art and audience can have communicated to them a little bit later in our show. But first, let's take a glimpse at a museum on a high school campus and see what kind of activities are happening there to help prepare students to know something about the art world. This is the Slater Memorial Museum. It is on the campus of the Norwich Free Academy in Norwich, Connecticut. As you see, it is a Richardsonian architectured building. It was built in 1886, and it is original to the campus of NFA. library room. It is a beautiful original to the building of Slater Memorial Museum, built in 1886. Notice the beautiful vaulted ceilings and the beautiful molding. It has stayed in use throughout all these years for the city of Norwich and all of its guests. It's crowded and busy today because there is a special event. Dr. Charles Chu has been invited to come to the Slater Museum to give a lecture demonstration on Chinese brush painting. This museum is part of a high school campus and is so focused on education and art. The connection between students of every age and art, not only art history but art techniques, in order to make a connection between what art is about and what our life is about. We'll do some discussion on this kind of a question later on in the studio. We're going to take a peek at some of the demonstration and comments that Dr. Chu makes during his lecture so that we too can get a connection between his art, his traditional Chinese brushwork, and the contemporary world in which we live. Dr. Chu is an emeritus professor at Connecticut College and is here by request of the Slater Memorial Museum. We'll be back in the studio to talk more about this later. Thank you.
Demonstrate painting. Well, painting, in Chinese painting, you cannot do that without some training, which is calligraphy. And it's so important because it is a brushwork. In calligraphy, you train how to handle the brush and what style of calligraphy you want. And also, remember, all the training is for to do Chinese painting, there are a few things you must know. That's very important. The way you hold brush is different from the way I do. Let me show you how to. There are 4 things. Hold the brush straight. With the finger so tight. Without there's a hollow in your palm. And make your arm flexible. Flexible. And that is how you produce the whole brushwork. Normally, of course, on a table, much better. This may drip on my really fresh, clean pants. Like a dancing ink, like a flying saucer. You didn't do it. This is the way. Because when you do painting, you try to have the image in your hand. And with the powerful brushwork, and instantaneously do it, you do not labor on the details. That is the Chinese literary scholarly work, which I do. Okay, but I don't elaborate everything I do. I just try to get the image forward with a spirit that And things may take only a few minutes. Things may take years to do. That's what I'm doing. That's why I hired her to do this. So with this kind of brushwork, then I consider how much water you use. Because make the gradation likely and really appealing. So how do you do? So Chinese will say, use brushing hard, know how much ink you use, difficult, and how much water you use. That really make the quite difference. The difference is because you were happy, you didn't make too little, so little to dry. So much it is spread. And so lose this power. So at first one, I do use brush. Use the ink. Wash the ink. Get wet. Then dip in the tip of the your brush. Don't need too much because it's very dark. You make this of it. And you see this already. It's dark and light. And then you must know the texture of the paper. If the paper is so hard and smooth, that's one way. If the paper very soft and absorbent, that's another way. If it's very thick, it takes a lot of water. And remember, it will fade and eat up. When it dry, lose so much. All those things, you have to remember that. So I brought 3 kinds of paper today, just to show you. This is this one. I walk in the flower shop. I buy my wife a flower, but too expensive. For 1 rose. So I said no. It just catches the spirit. That's one for the it uses color. And remember, use only the tip. The tip has more color. And to quickly catch study the pen and study the shape, the color, fading, and get the meaning. You don't have to be so precise. Don't. You do. That is considered color. Whatever color. And then if you use one leaf and then still you have that kind of gradations. How do you do that? Of course, the logic, dark, lighter, lighter. And by the way you cross brush, you have. And when you draw, but not too wet, it blend together again. If it's too dry, it's separate. So know the timing is very important. You just writing a character, just writing a character that way. And that's
This gallery, a beautiful but newer room than the Sears Library. This was added in 1906 to the Slater Memorial Museum, and it's been used for a display of wonderful art, artifacts, and crafts through all the years. I'm with Marianne Hall, the docent of Slater Memorial Museum, whose function it is to connect the students not only of the Norwich Academy, but from far and wide, of every age, to come to the museum and to get a connection between the art and their life. Marianne, tell us something about what we see in this gallery now.
This part, the Congress Art Gallery, is exclusively used for rotating exhibition spaces. And this particular exhibition, which features works from our permanent collection is called Art Through the Ages. It's a multicultural show that shows literally the elegance and the beauty, for instance, of many cultures in their art forms. And we use this for educational purposes. We actually have taken several of the busts or casts from the Slater Museum's collection, and I have brought them into the gallery space. The museum is noted for its splendid collection of Greek, Roman, and Renaissance casts. Initially, when the museum opened in 1888, it was with this collection being the forerunner, for instance, for educational purposes. So the museum has been used literally for education since that time. What I do is complement courses of study so that when students study, for instance, Greek mythology, Periclean age, etc., they come and we literally tie in with slides that I've taken from sites in Greece and the use of the cast collection, and it becomes a meaningful experience, I think.
This particular collection that we show today has a little bit from many of the collections that you have in your permanent collection upstairs. Isn't that so?
Yes.
So it's kind of a good way to have an idea of some of the things that the Slater Memorial Museum is famous for, and it's quite an enviable collection.
Right, it is. It's very eclectic in the sense that many gifts have been given to the museum over the course of the 100-year span, 105 years actually, and it's a wonderful museum. It's a gem, literally. It houses a wonderful Asian collection, Native American pieces, African art collection, beautiful rooms of furniture, this rotating exhibition space, and students here also major in art. They can major in art, so at the end of the year we have this wonderful art exhibit here for students. So education and art are really alike with one another.
Now this not only is showing art objects, but because, as you say, so much of the collection has been given by local citizenry and many people who used to live in Norwich and who have moved further away, who know that Norwich Slater Memorial Museum is still alive and well, even later in their lives, as they've been collecting things, give gifts. Is that not so?
That's definitely correct. We also have a group called the Friends of the Museum who donate works through charitable efforts and things like so. There are many people, for instance, a man whose name is Secret Marks from New York City this summer donated several pieces of African art to add to the collection, and they do so because it is part of an educational institution. This is one of two museums in the United States on a high school campus, and it literally is a garden.
Well, that is very, very particular about this museum. It is, say that once more, it is one of two
museums in the United States on a high school campus. And so the function of the museum is not only to link the museum itself with the community, but is to have a leading role in the education of art as a meaningful experience.
Now, you lecture regularly to the students.
Yes, I do.
And they're not only art students.
No, no.
I'd like that point particularly. Tell us what kind of students do you get here and what do you hope to teach them?
We have requests. People call months in advance, literally, for outside groups. We have children that come from nursery schools. We actually have public school children who have never been exposed to a museum experience before. We have several students that have been use our cast collection, for instance, as a culminating project because they are very into Greek mythology. They love Greek mythology. This is the most perfect way to culminate an activity. If students study, for instance, the Scarlet Letter, we can use the colonial rooms upstairs. You make it a meaningful experience because art is not divorced from the society that has created it. It is a vital function, and it's an overt manifestation, literally, of that kind of thing. And so I start here at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I have classes all day. And we go all day. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the very interesting attitudes that you have in your museum is copying art. So much in the art world we hear, or we think that we should be hearing that copying art is bad. Art cannot be copies. Tell us about this attitude about copying art. You have a number right even in this gallery today. You have a Michelangelo copy, a Leonardo da Vinci copy. Tell us what your attitude is on copy.
What happens in the cast collection particularly, and what we have in this particular area, frieze from the Parthenon area, It served in the 19th century as an introduction to the antique, if you will, or antiquity. And people did not make the distinction between the original and the copy with the same type of difference we choose to do so today. They used the same reverence and solemnity towards that object, and it would be the case that that kind of vogue was in fashion for a long period of time. It changed about the 1920s and 1930s when other groups, like the Metropolitan, for instance, had a group of people come here in 1889, and upon seeing our collection, hired Edward Robinson to acquire one for the Met. In the 1920s, 1930s, the concept of copy became not a popular one. So museums elected to rid themselves of, quote, these copies. Now it turns out that these things are marvelous because not only of their craftsmanship, people are not even aware of how these things were made. It's an art form unto itself. We get requests from all over the United States, from Europe, and all kinds of things like so about our cast collection. We have a nice new catalog that has been revised since 1905, and there's a tremendous amount in antiquity, and especially for the use of the copy. Matter of fact, the National Museum in Athens is now recreating copies again, if you will. Not with the same procedure as the ones that we have. Ours are much more intricate. We invite you here. This is a wonderful place to visit.
Thank you, Marianne. You've been so helpful. And now, before we go back to the Charles Chu collection demonstration, we're going to take our camera into the cast gallery so that we can pan the gallery. And if we hear some dramatization going on in the background, it's because you must remember that this is in fact a high school. And after school drama classes are together practicing for a show that they're about to present to the community. Thank you.
Here I have the advantage of being director of the museum. I can show my own work anytime I want to, right? Now, the reason I just put this up recently, we were given a painting by Barbara Latham, who's the sister of Mr. Latham, who gave over $1 million to him. So I was very, very anxious to put it up with him because he plans to come down and do work.
And that, which one is that?
The watercolor.
Oh, right here? This one is
It's a painting that, well, I really don't know. I hope it's like, yes. Very seldom I put a date on my painting.
Joe, we're back in Congress Gallery now, and I see that this particular part of the gallery is used for a contemporary show. Can you tell me something about that?
Well, it's used for, excuse me, rotating exhibitions, not always contemporary shows. We do have work by two contemporary artists now, as well as a theme show of art through the ages, going on simultaneously. I think this is really one of the best spaces that I know of for exhibiting work, and especially contemporary work, because the light is truly magnificent in this space. And every 5 weeks, we have a new exhibit here.
And this is the gallery to which the students of the high school are brought regularly. What is it for them that they can learn and take away from an experience coming through the galleries and listening to a lecture, either by you or by Marianne?
Well, I think it's very important that they familiarize themselves with the language of vision. After all, there are four basic means of communication: verbalization, visualization, music, and the dance. And I think an exposure to these four basic means of communications is part of their educational exposure here at the Norwich Free Academy. And we do emphasize extensively the visual arts. I mean, how many schools have a museum on their campus? To the best of my knowledge, this is one of only two in the country.
Right. And the attitude that you have here is enviable, especially at this time when budget cutting is just so flagrant and just so everywhere, that the arts are being cut out of education at every level. And we feel, and you agree with me, that that essentially in an educational institution, the arts for every age must be ongoing.
I think it's very essential to the education of young people, of course.
Yes. So you have, like, how many students coming through here?
I don't have an exact number. We do have over 36,000 visitors per year here at the Slater Museum.
And in terms of the artists in the community, the Slater Memorial Museum is a center, really, for artists, even through Connecticut. The museum is well known, as a matter of fact, for an important show that happens every year.
Yeah, we do have a juried exhibition. As a matter of fact, this year will be the 50th year for the Connecticut juried exhibition.
Have you chosen your jury yet?
We're still waiting for an answer to that question. I did contact the person. I'm not quite certain whether he has answered or not. I just came back from vacation, so I really don't know.
Well, we wish you lots of good luck.
I did ask Paul Zimmerman. He's quite a well-known Connecticut artist. Hopefully he will jury the show.
And it will be a one-jury show.
Yes. Usually we have just a single jury. And the prizes are 4 solo shows at the museum here.
I see. And this is the sort of space it would be in.
Yes. As a matter of fact, the 2 solo shows that you see here today are the 2 winners from 2 of the 4 winners from last year's exhibit.
I see. Well, we wish you lots of good luck with your annual show this year, and we will be here in the audience to see you, and we hope that our audience comes and visits and becomes your audience as well. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Rona.
Right.
Sorry,
Are you supposed to talk about it?
I'm going to talk to Charles about it after I thank Joe.
This is contour line, and your second one called boneless, no bone, no flesh, no flesh. So when you have a contour line, meaning you do this.
Thank you, Joe and Marianne. That was Director Joe P. Gualtiere, the director of the Slater Memorial Museum at NFA, and the docent, Marianne Hall, offering us a glimpse of a day in the life of Slater Memorial Museum. All of those things were going on at once. Dr. Chu was doing his demonstration in the Sears room, while we took a little walk quietly through the cast gallery with Marianne Hall. And then down in Converse Gallery, we took a look at the show that was on view, and also one of the winners of last year's Connecticut Artist Show with Mr. Gualtiere and Marianne. And thank you very much for that glimpse into Slater. Now, Charles, I thought the demonstration was very interesting that you did at the Sears room, and I was very interested to see how excited your audience was. Who were they? Were they mostly artists?
I noticed a few friends and noticed a few artists, and I think it's a mixture.
Mostly they were not artists, though, would you say?
Most of them are, I don't think so, but I think they are curious about what I can do for them.
Well, they seem to be more than curious, and I'm wondering if they were not artists, and most of them do not own brushes and paints, Why were they, do you think, so interested in the techniques that you were showing them about the Chinese brush painting?
I think that in the West, they all want to know what the Chinese brushwork can do, Chinese artists are really about. I think it's really curious, for knowledge's sake, curiosity's sake, and I just wanted to know the different different type of work. And therefore, whenever I give a demonstration, there are always people with all kind of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I try to explain to them what I see art and the techniques part and the philosophy, the attitude, the characteristics of Chinese painting and brushwork. I think it applies to even to the Japanese painting or Korean painting, the Eastern painting. And I feel that it's lots of fun to share my view with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why people just come in to see, at least to see what's done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is done.
Yeah, right.
They certainly did seem to enjoy it very much. Janet, your students, through your career as a docent at the Slater, where you got not only teenagers all day long to lecture to whose interest may have been for the moment really on the car that they drive, but you also had the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the younger schools come through that you introduced to art, as well as college age and post-college age students at the college level, and now as coordinator for the adult studies studio art at Lyman Allen. You see people of all ages interested and sensitive to the art world. What is it that you can teach them?
Well, I always say to my studio art students, the ones that I'm teaching the techniques of painting to, something that one of my former art professors told me, and that is that with studio art, you really cannot teach people how to paint. People teach themselves how to paint. You direct them, you introduce them, you lead them, you know, you kind of take them along a path. But ultimately, in the study of painting techniques, people teach themselves. They want to do it, they're motivated, they love it, and they spend time at it, and eventually they just get better and better as they go. And the teaching is really done by the people themselves. With other groups, where you're taking people through a museum and you're showing them work that may be hanging, and you're telling them about the history of it and the sociology of it and the political aspects of it, then you're really functioning much more as a classroom teacher. And you're bringing in a lot of information, and you're enriching what they're seeing by placing it in a context that they can relate to. So it's a very different kind of teaching when you're teaching technical aspects of painting and when you're teaching art history or art appreciation.
But even when you are dealing with the technical aspects of painting, Charles, with your brush stroke or your abstraction of a flower in the middle of a large space, and you with a larger subject, you tend to fill up more of your canvas when you paint your own self, kind of your personal style, than does Charles. Even when you're talking about these techniques, are you in any way connecting a personal expression of an artist? Are you teaching or helping the artist come out with any particular kinds of expression?
Oh, sure. When I'm teaching, well, the teaching that I'm doing now at the museum is really very personal kinds of teaching. I'm working with a student one-on-one. I mean, even though the class may have 15 or 20 people in it, you walk around and you talk to each person individually. And if they're doing something that reminds you of the work of an artist, of a historical artist, I always run down to the library and bring a book up to show them. And, you know, they're struggling to say something, and you show them the way that it has been said. One of the things that I always say to my students is that everybody who has ever painted, probably, has painted an apple or a flower or a nude. I mean, there are just so many limited subjects, and everybody has painted it differently. And what you are trying to paint when you paint any subject is how you see it and what you express through it. So you really, every person paints their own personality in some sense. And that's really the core of what makes art so fascinating, you know, studio art so fascinating for people, is that it's a way that they have of expressing their personality and what they feel and their time also, you know, the time in which they live, through sometimes very humble subject matter.
So the subject matter is often a vehicle for a feeling. And Charles, in your case, what is it you feel that the Oriental subject matter can tell to a Western audience, say, about the cultures you'd like them to learn more about?
Subject matter is it is just something you want to depict the natural things, daily things, common things, but really the feeling with which you do is the important thing. When I show students and do my own work, it is really my way of looking at things. The subject is just something I want to express. The feeling is more important, and I think not only the feeling. What is the feeling? The feeling is my way of looking at the subject. The subject is only instrumental there. And therefore, for instance, I don't paint until I really feel excited. And I don't paint when I want to see that it's not communicating with people. That's probably the difference between the East and West in many ways. Things that I have done common to you. Many more Western artists I know, when it's something different, that's their way of doing it. But I'm doing what I feel. 1, competent. 2, to share. 3, to see this is what Charles Chu has done. So it is a main purpose to share.
Do you think that all artists feel that way?
I think they probably feel that way later on in the game. One of the things that I like to repeat to my students, because I feel as time goes by that it becomes truer for me, and so it's probably truer for them. And that is that there are a number of stages to learning how to paint. And in the beginning, for all of us, you're learning the technical aspects. You're learning how to hold a brush and how to mix paint and how to put the paint on the canvas so it doesn't get muddy, and very simple things that get more and more complicated as you go on. And you can spend virtually your entire life learning how to paint, learning the medium, learning how to simulate what you see, or if you're painting abstractly, just learning to put the paint on the canvas in an attractive and interesting way. That's for me, and I think for advanced students, the beginning, because the second stage is that you use the painting skills. You really forget about them. You use them to express some personal view. I mean, because that's what really art is about, and that's really the most important thing about art for most people, is that it can be used to express what people feel very personally and in their hearts, and they do it through painting, and for each person it's different. So you have to find a way of saying what only you can feel and using the medium to express it. And then there's another level that almost nobody ever gets to, and that is a situation in which you create a new vocabulary. And people like Picasso or Matisse or Michelangelo, the greats of art history have done that. But for most of us, we're very happy either to be in the first or the second level.
Well, but you are describing somewhat of a language. And you're talking about this language being first much more simple, and then you get enough stuff to use so that you can make more of an intellectual statement. But how can the non-artist learn this language? And is it important for them to know this language? How can we get clued, we non-artists, who are not paying attention to is the muddy color purposeful or was that a mistake? How can we get clued into knowing what the art is about? If the artist wants us to know that, why can't we have more clues?
You have to learn about it. I mean, I don't know anything about football because I've never actually sat down and had anybody teach me. And if I go to a football game, I'm sure I'm just watching things that are meaningless to me. In the same way, people have to learn about art. When you really think about art, it is the one record that we have of how people lived, thought, felt from earliest times on. I mean, outside of bones, you have nothing that tells you what people really felt except for art. And that's true for every single age and stage and era. So when people are taught and they look at art, I mean, so much is revealed to them about the history of the world.
Do you think, Charles, that I've been to shows of yours where absolutely everything sells out? You have a wonderful audience that adores your work and bespeaks your artistry. Do you think that a room full of art voyeurs, lovers of art, look at your work and have enough clues, have enough education behind them to understand what your work is about?
They should. They should. I think, to me, as educator, I want to explain through the art. I want to use the word educator. That's too much, too big a word. Therefore, what I want to convey through my art is to inspire them, and any piece of art should be exciting. And how do you get to that stage? Just like Janet said, it's not the technique. It's not a technique we want to teach. Technique can be acquired through years. But the knowledge that are putting in the art, that's important. We all love art. We are artists. Everybody can be an artist. But to be a good artist, you have to have many things, not just pick up the brush and do it, and use the oil canvas to do it. Is what you want to do, make it valuable and convincing, inspiring, through what? Through what you understand, the culture itself, the subject itself, and your own self is involved. I know, I'm not just doing a painting for the painting's sake. It's something, if I can share, there is knowledge behind it. There's a philosophy in it. There's our own soul that really means. Therefore, as you mentioned at the show, I got letters, people, I cried in front of a painting. I did too. That's why it's important to me.
So this is
the same thing.
Right. You're talking very personally then of a relationship between the audience and art. You feel that looking at art, if the art is made with such a personal, soul-wrenching feeling of wanting to share private feelings and personal expressions, then you want the audience to do something about engaging in the artwork. And you want them to be able to feel, see, understand something about your feelings so that they themselves can know some of their feelings better, do you think?
What you really want to happen when people see art is you really want them to complete a dialogue. When the artist has painted, he's painted alone. And what Charles says is absolutely true. You're painting what you feel in your innermost soul. But when the painting hangs on the wall in a museum, the audience, the observer has to complete that entire interaction, because he has to bring to it the final result. He has to see it, and it has to mean something to him as well.
Well, we do see then that education about these kinds of clues in art that connect to feelings are very important. And we hope that more and more educational institutions will understand this essential need. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with me?
Therefore, I think if look at any painting, for a moment, let your soul really get lost in the piece. Forget about some of the mundane things. I know we have to pay tax. We have no obligations, but there's one moment, like a spiritual inspiration. That moment is a very treasured, should be treasured. I think art can do that.
We then agree. We need you all to think about this. We are art. Art reflects us. It is our mirror, and like a mirror, it can teach us about ourselves. Art can reaffirm both the ordinary, everyday parts of our world and the extraordinary feelings that we have personally. It can help connect these realities of our everyday surroundings with our own very idiosyncratic feelings. It can help us to know ourselves better, make us better in touch with feelings. And it can teach us with this new vocabulary of feelings to be in touch with our heads and our hands and our hearts. It can help us perhaps in our everyday relationships with each other, with our fears and our angers. It can make us better people and better involved with each other. For both art lovers and art makers, art is a verb. We all act it. We are it. We are art. We're very glad that you could join us for this conversation about art and audience, and we hope that you can do this again. It would make sense to us for all of you to care that art interpretation be a very important, essential part of education, and we hope that you agree. What do you think? Thank you. This is Rona Rutchik.